Welcome to Heber Valley Life Podcast, where we share the stories of people who shape the character and the future of our mountain communities. I'm your host, Rachel Kahler, and today we're headed just over the hill to charming Swiss-inspired town of Midway to visit with Mayor Craig Simons. Craig is a longtime Midway resident and a local business owner. His family operates one of the valley's most iconic destinations, the Homestead Crater, and after years of community involvement, Craig recently earned 76% of the vote to become Midway's mayor. His path to leadership began with the Midway Planning Commission, then City Council, and now the Mayor's Office, not to forget his involvement with Midway Boosters, along with learning and infrastructure, city design, and the delicate balance between preserving Midway's character while planning for the future. So, Craig, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
Craig and I have known each other for several years. In fact, we just made the connection when his father first started digging and creating the crater entrance. I was a student at Wasatch High School in my junior year working at the Homestead, and our paths must have crossed as your dad was really exploring and preparing that entryway into the crater. But I want to hear the story from you on your dad's vision of the crater.
And it's a good story. So back in 1994, we purchased a business, scuba diving business in Utah County. And the process of getting certified, there's an academic component, there's the pool work, but then you have actual, what are called open water dives. And there's a lake out on the Utah-Nevada border in Wendover that we would go to every other week. And it was a pain. And you had to drive out there, and I had to spend the night in a stinky casino. Didn't care for it. And we found out about the Homestead having water in they used to call it the Moa or the dome. Yeah. And so we approached the Homestead, and took about 6 months to get to the right person. The director of activities was involved in the golf, and it literally took us 6 months to finally get an audience. Proposed the idea, and they thought about it a bit and came back with the answer of, if you pay for it, you can do it.
And I believe there was a large insurance policy required. I remember that, hearing that conversation.
$1 million bond.
Yes.
Which, that's a lot of money.
Yeah.
So we took the risk, and the visionary, and it's easy to look back 30 years later, but it was a great decision. But I do remember the days when we first opened where there was, nobody knew about it. We're on the north side of the property, far away from the front desk. The only thing that was happening out there were golfers would grab a golf cart and then head to where you were working. And I remember, as we were talking earlier, when there was nothing going on, we'd help shuttle the golf carts from the car barn over to the pro shop, and got to know some folks, longtime residents, John Flynn and Van Kelly, and we still joke about it today.
Yeah. And it's crazy to think back, though. 30 years ago, scuba diving was, kind of a niche. And now it's so many people because the traveling, you can travel to the Maldives, you can travel to Florida or Hawaii and have that diving experience. But you were really the only game in town for that deeper water. 55 feet. I remember the crater. 65 feet. And I remember even that lake in Nevada, it was cold, it was dark. And so now you are inviting people to come and get their scuba certification in a lovely, beautiful area with the resort right there. They could stay overnight. They could get acclimated to the water, and it's warm.
That's the key. It's warm.
Yeah.
The experience is good. It didn't make a lot of sense to put somebody in a real thick wetsuit. Take them out to this cold, took you almost 300 feet through the mud to get to this lake. Homestead, the crater, was such a better experience. And it was more true to the experience that they would have at the beach.
Right.
Right. Don't wear a 7-mil suit. You're in the sun and the sand. We weren't in the sun and the sand, but we were indoors and had warm water. So it was great. And it still continues to be great today.
Well, and you've had some really neat experiences with the film industry. You've had several movies filmed there. I'm thinking of the one where the the gentleman had to cut off his arm. I can't remember what it's called.
127 hours.
Yes.
And it put us on the map as a destination. And it wasn't long before silly shows like The Bachelor, The Bachelorette, Housewives of Salt Lake City. That one I pushed back on for quite a while until we got them in. But there's been many music videos and some small feature films. But I got a request yesterday for somebody wanting to come in and work on a project. And it's great. It's amazing what that place has been turned into. The most unique one, though, was a video presented by New Skin on an energy drink they developed. It took off. There's a bridge up there, and it was craned off. It put a 20-foot platform up and brought in the Red Bull dive team, and they Peter Panned off the top of this platform into the water. And
it's one of those kids don't do this at home.
Not at all. Not at all. But it backlit it with color, LED light panels, and they had these suits on that were illuminated, and they tapped their chests, and then they immediately were lit up.
Wow, I bet it's beautiful.
It was pretty cool, and it took an entire day into the night and into the morning.
You know, my favorite thing though about the crater is it's accessible for anyone. You can go and soak in the crater. You can feel the mineral springs, but it's just the environment that you've created in there with, especially in the wintertime when it's snowing. It's just so peaceful. And when I was managing the ice castles, we had so many people that would come to the ice castles and then they would want to come and soak in the crater. And some were able to make that combination. But you've created such an amazing attraction for our community that it truly has become the number one destination because you're open 365 days a year. You're not contingent on weather. It's good in the winter. It's good in the summer. Talk about tourism and Midway. And because I really feel like the crater, while the Homestead Resort has been there for 100 years, the crater really did put the Homestead on the map as far as international travelers.
Yeah, so much like Midway, the crater's a special place. And whether it's the water, whether it's getting out of the elements, whether it's floating, there's something special about those waters. And I say it jokingly, but I fully, believe that. It's a gathering point. For me, life these days is about connection. And that's the sense of community that I feel in Midway. Whether it's before I even lived here, getting invited to be part of Boosters in their little booth at Swiss Days, I'd come up and try to find somebody that I knew that would give me a food ticket and work in a booth. And, there's many ways, whether it's hiking up in the mountains, showing up for Swiss Days. We now have some very popular businesses, great restaurants. That connection to me is what Midway is. We have a town square that we're putting effort into to continue to have it be the gathering place in Midway. I love hiking up in the state park. I was up there yesterday, and they're just special places that allow people to reconnect with life, with nature, with other individuals. So for me, that's Midway.
Yeah. And it's so authentic. I mean, you think of the people that founded Midway and you drive around Midway and you see so many elements that are original, the pot rock homes, the fence lines, Memorial Hill. It's so iconic. And even as Midway's evolved and grown, you've been able to retain a lot of that Swiss charm and heritage. And, we always bring up Swiss Days because it is so impactful as far as how many people come. But day in and day out, Midway has kept that charm. And I really do think it's because of people like you that even though were running a business, you respected the local heritage that was already there and really weaved yourself into it.
And that has been important for me. There are a lot of stories in Midway. And as I talk to people, I was in St. George at a water conference, and people would say, "Where are you from?" outside of Utah, you say Midway, they don't know where it is. You say Park City, I'm just south of Park City. But when you get back to Utah and the different areas that you mentioned here for Midway, the immediate comment is, oh, Midway's beautiful. And it is, and it's beautiful because of the people that are there. The surroundings are gorgeous. But once again, it's the stories, whether it's the homestead, whether it's Luke's Hot Pot, Mountain Spa, whether it's the families that are foundational to Midway being Midway, Clovers and Probst and Coleman's and, Huber Grove I hike to in the mornings. I think part of the secret sauce to Midway is not forgetting that past, right? As I ran for city council, my tagline was preserving the past, but focusing on the future. And that's what we've tried to do in Midway. And I continue to do that, acknowledging the legacy that's there.
Let's talk about Midway boosters, because I feel like the boosters really have been instrumental in preserving the heritage of Midway. You are a past Midway booster president, and I feel like Swiss Days is ingrained in you now because of your experience with the boosters. It amazes me, though, how the Midway boosters has been able to bring in new blood as people have moved into the community and helped people understand this is who we are. If you live in Midway, Swiss Days and Swiss Christmas and the Swiss Miss are all going to be something that you are going to love. So let's talk about Midway boosters. How long have you been involved, and maybe some of the roles that you played there?
Boosters to me is pretty special, and it's very neat. My first introduction to boosters was back Midway Business Alliance, and heard about that. My parents were involved. The Olympics came, and when we moved up here in 2010, as I mentioned earlier, I was invited by somebody that lived up the street from me, and I'd always visited as a visitor, but I felt that I'd arrived because I was part of what was going on now, right? And started my Swiss Days pin collection, which I still have and actively trade pins. I saw the new pins for this year last week. They're doing two. One of them is a tribute to the America 250, and then the other's to a Midway building. But my first involvement was just working in the booth for the boosters. And then I got to be involved in the hamburger and the hot dog booth. And I kind of stepped out of line and would go find booths that I didn't know anything about, or I didn't know the people because they were representative of other neighborhoods.
Yeah.
And worked in the booths. And then I got involved with boosters. They came to my house and interviewed me.
Wow.
So I had to be good enough to be part of it. And
There is a selection committee.
there is. There's a board of, I think, 30 people now. They just come and figure out something you want to do. What are your talents and how can you help? And, there's a dozen activities that boosters are involved in. The most obvious probably is Swiss Days. Swiss Miss is a component of that. Beautification Day, with the
Founders Day.
annual.
Yeah.
We're going back to Beautification Day.
Okay.
The efforts to bring the city and boosters together stronger than they've been in the last while. But my next push is going to be that everybody in Midway is a booster and bring the community together. Let that board kind of facilitate the activities, but bring everybody. Once again, gathering at connections is important to me. I felt that on boosters. I got to know people. I was at dinner 2 weeks ago with somebody that I met in boosters 14 years ago, and we're still friends.
Yeah.
We travel, we go different places, but we get back together, whether it's a meal or seeing each other at the post office or wherever. Had the opportunity to work in the booth that they have, the merchandising booth.
Which was brilliant, by the way, because it became this thing. Everyone wanted the volunteer shirts, but they didn't want to volunteer because they were coming in for shopping. Now you're selling merchandise and people can have a little bit of Swiss Days to take home with them. But I think they also want a little bit of Midway. And that's why those merchandise booth has become so popular, so much so that now you have the Midway must-haves, that shop where people can buy a little bit of Midway.
Take Midway home with you. There's a little bit of the focus right now for that to be less of a souvenir shop and more of a visitor center. We have so many visitors now that they're full of questions.
Yeah.
They want to go see.
They want to hear the stories. They want to understand how Midway was founded, who's currently living here, what do they do. Let's talk about your path to become the mayor, because you were first on the planning commission, then you were talked into city council. And I remember talking to you maybe 2 years ago where you were like, I feel comfortable in this role and I feel like I can do more as the mayor, but you were a little reluctant at first.
My family and those that know me well, friends, they laugh. It's like, mayor? Really? You? So my involvement with planning commission was, I didn't know anything about city governance at all.
Or land zone. Land
use, zone. In building my folks' home. You've got an inspector that comes. I represented my parents because they tried to move their driveway from off of Homestead Drive onto a more safe drive, road to be turning into. And it was very small town. And there was an individual back then that spoke up and said, this makes sense. I know these people. And there was an opening on the planning commission. I thought, I'll give it a try. I didn't know what I was getting into, didn't know anything about it. So I started to get to know the planner, the city engineer, the mayor I had known since I moved here, Celeste Johnson. Then she encouraged me. So I got involved, asked lots of questions. It's really funny. I don't know if it's the way I ask them, but every time I ask a question, they think I'm questioning them, not just questioning what's going on. It still happens today.
But your curiosity, but also that you're inquisitive. You're very inquisitive and you want to get to the root of some of these issues.
I am an analytical person. My frustration on the planning commission, though, is that it's a recommending body. And so I would make suggestions, or we've had discussions, or we would make a recommendation to the city council. And it was literally like launching something over the fence and hoping with your fingers crossed that your suggestion would be listened to. And many times it wasn't. And that frustration was a bit naive because I didn't understand the role of being on city council. You understand it, having had that opportunity as well. Well, when I was enjoying that opportunity and having my responsibilities, I dug in with that same curiosity and learned. And then somebody said, you ought to run for mayor. You know, a lot of people. And I went down on the last day, you can put your name in, and did, and then started this process. And it was in a room very similar to this where I did my first video. For 3 hours, they kept telling me to smile, smile, smile. I am a serious person by nature until you get to know me. But the intent was 100% about Midway, keeping Midway. It did not want or have an agenda. I want to represent my neighbors. People call me a politician, and it's a knee-jerk reaction. I'm not a politician. I'm your neighbor. Right. And I still want to be your neighbor. And I listen, and it's been a blast.
Yeah.
People say, how's it going? I'm there 6 days a week. It's supposed to be a part-time thing. There's nothing part-time about it. I do not go in on Sundays. That's family and church. But and I'm their first one. I'm the last one out the door. And I had one of the new city council members come up and say, dude, you better,
pace yourself. It's going to be a long 4 years if you keep this up.
This is what.
Okay, but now I'm curious because I had an opportunity this week to attend the Midway Business Alliance. You mentioned that earlier. And it was so refreshing to be in a room full of business owners that were very interested in collaborating together and putting something forward to improve Midway, which we know is already beautiful, but there's an opportunity and it feels like the community wants to create something that is both for the locals, but also brings tourism together. And it was so refreshing to hear John Platt with Midway Mercantile, who has done a fantastic job creating one of those anchors of Midway Main Street. And John said, let's do it. Let's move this forward. Craig, let's talk about your vision as mayor, because you have been instrumental in working with these business owners and saying, we've got to do it together. We've got to work city, Midway boosters, and the business owners to create something that we're all going to be proud of.
Well, first, I would say John has been an anchor. His attitude has been awesome. You go to John and ask for something, and the answer is always yes.
Yeah.
I really respect that. Yeah, Midway Business Alliance, that word alliance means a lot to me. And I've seen businesses thrive working together. And I've seen businesses not thrive because they can't work together. And having been a member for 15 years of the Midway Business Alliance, the frustration for me has always been the ebb and flow of this group getting together and then people being so busy working in their businesses, not on their businesses. And so for me, the Alliance was always a way to connect. I remember conversations, even with Mark over at the train. Hey, let's do something with the railroad. We both bring people here on a daily basis. He's so busy with what he's doing, you know, Mark. And so he's at task. And I went down to some of the restaurants. Oh yeah, we know you. You send people to us all the time. So this thought that this
almost a symbiotic relationship, even though you're separate, you're dispersed, but you're referring your customers to them. And I see a lot of that happening in Midway.
It does happen because people are curious. We're done and fill in the blank, right? Whether it's we've eaten at the Creamery and had our tomato soup and grilled cheese sandwich, or we're down at the Crater, or we've been golfing up at Wasatch, or we've been down to some of the shops around the square. What's next? And so the visitor center will help us with that. But I think it's important. I'm trying to bring these businesses together. My frustration, I'll be transparent here, which I always am. There were times where the chamber would come in trying to help, but be frustrated with the lack of engagement and be a little strong-headed. And the city had done the same thing. I did not go. I was not there, as you saw, intentionally.
Yeah, because you wanted those business owners to agree together how they wanted to move forward and then come to the city and say, okay, let's collaborate.
Exactly.
I love it.
And there was the idea of the Swiss stroll.
Yeah.
I'm working on an idea of having some type of a show that takes this sweep around Midway.
How fun would that be? A little trolley that people,
Exactly.
It's part of the experience. I love it. You know, a couple of years ago when I was on the Tourism Economic Development Board, we allocated money to help Midway City purchase land for a parking lot. And for many years, it was a gravel dirt parking lot. You now have the funding and you paved it recently and striped it. And it's so important to see the infrastructure go in, something as simple as a parking lot, to support the businesses. Because Midway still wants to keep that charm of a walkable Main Street, which you have. And now you're seeing the investment happening around the town square, which I'm so envious of. Because it's happened organically, but it wasn't without planning, if that makes sense.
I would agree partially.
Okay, tell me about it.
Right. So code is important as you try to figure out how many parking spots a business needs. But when you have a business come in that's been successful, and whether I like it or not, the influence comes from online. And it brings a lot of people into town, and they're looking for a way to identify with these very successful businesses. So the traffic, the parking, frustrates the longtime residents. They can't be ignored either.
Right.
You can drive down some of the outlying streets and you see green or orange columns. That's not the right way to handle it. It's not their land to put a cone on. It's rough for the city. Come and say, move the cones and stick these cars all day long in front of your house and have them making U-turns out in front, but without a vision, I think that's the part that's the most important. Is just there's got to be a vision, or else you end up where you didn't know you would be.
And this year, it feels especially, you talk about influencers and the online presence that are bringing people to Midway. But I think about Lola's Street Kitchen. And when David Medina made that investment, it was already a beloved establishment. Scrappy's, the Coleman family, Chad and Clint were in the process of reviving it. And it's amazing to see how Lola's Street Kitchen has such a following. The locals love it, but the tourists love it, and they come up for lunch and whatnot. But now you've seen this influx of Folklore Bookstore, Springer Farms, Ballerina Farms, Dainty Pear, Rocky Mountain Chocolate Factory, Spruce, Kringles. All of these shops have just strengthened Midway's downtown. And they're bringing people to Midway's downtown. And yes, you're hearing the locals say, I can't get into my driveway anymore. It used to be just Swiss days, and now it's every day. What are things that you are seeing that we can do to help mitigate some of these pressures?
It's a really good question. It's a difficult question because we talked about the legacy of Midway, and to preserve that, you have to be sensitive to this. You see land and you want to find a way to use it or purchase it, and people don't want to sell it. And so we do have a nice, pretty parking lot, and I'm glad that it's down the street of it from the square. I mean, my vision down the road is we're going to have businesses from one end of Main Street to the other. We've got an anchor down there with the granary and also South Hill coming in. There's other businesses, whether it's Danny, there's another entity working now. There's supposed to be a pizza, a beach place coming in.
Pizza Yard is already successful, as is Gallery and Harvest.
Cubby's has just come in. It's funny, I met with Cubby. I went over the morning he opened, and we were talking about Lola's. I said, oh, that's my favorite place to eat, which is cool. Yeah. Once again, that's that alliance or that willingness to work together. It's not an easy answer, and it's something that we deal with regularly. Just scheduled actual work meetings with the city council to get the group together and say, these are our issues. First one is Monday night with taxation. Then we're moving into the town square. Then we're going to talk about Swiss days and how the square can be engaging with the businesses. We closed Second West and Main Street around the square last year, partially. Goal this year is completely. And that extends the square to these businesses. Well,
and makes pedestrian safety one.
Well, that was my number one motivation. I appreciate the sheriff supporting us and helping us. We've got another parking lot south of town, so we're able to bring people from north and south and to minimize the traffic. But yeah, it was about safety and getting from the square to these businesses. It's a process, and we're trying to find a way to welcome the world. And we're starting to see international guests again, which really is a treat for me because, prior to 2020, we had people from all over the globe. And we had 2 displays in the back in the activity center where you could check into the crater. One was the silly things they would ask.
I remember that sign.
And the other one was an idea of where people are coming from, right?
Yeah.
And we truly get people from all over the world. The analytics on our software at the crater would show that. When Dan's looking, it's 3 a.m. in Africa, and somebody's coming to Utah for whatever reason. It's probably around a conference, and they were scheduling a crater.
So great.
It is neat.
So great. I want to ask you about Midway's general plan. And one thing that I have found interesting is Michael Hinkey is a great planner, and he has said, Midway's plan for preservation is more estate build-outs, and yet you still have South Hill, which is more of a condo development density with subterranean parking. But I feel like one of the things that Midway has kind of put the stake in the ground is we are going to preserve open space through bonding and through zoning. And I just want to understand, it's an interesting kind of direction where the state is pushing for more affordability. Midway's saying, we recognize the need for affordability, but there is a demand for a certain type of housing, and we can meet that demand. And obviously, it's more large homes, large estates. Is that going to change, or do you feel like that's really the direction that Midway residents want to go?
I think it's important to have a balance, really. We have resorts, and that's a very important part of Midway. The Homestead's going through a $240 million overhaul. Both have very important and special ties to the Homestead. Always coming in. And so that resort component is there in Zermatt. We have those three anchors that are there. One of the efforts to encourage affordability is working with some of the local builders and developers to go up out of the box thinking. We're working on some things right now. The sticky component of this is the value of the land. You take a half acre that costs $500,000. I never thought that I would be living in a home that has the perceived value that it has. I couldn't build a home now, and so, but there are people that come and have the money to build these beautiful homes, and we need to be able to support everybody. One of the forward-thinking components from Michael Hankey, our planner, is number one, our general plan. And he's convinced the Planning Commission and the City Council to follow it. The way to do that was to have them create it within. Right. I have 5 different chapters that I was responsible to, and I engaged.
Yeah.
I learned. I look at things somewhat through his funny colored glasses. But we also have to think outside of that. This is going to take creative thinking. The mixed use, we're having like above Folklore or Haven, places for folks to come and stay nightly. The transition of Midway from a farming community to welcoming the world. I was talking to somebody the other day in St. George that has ties to Midway. Oh yeah, my family had this, and my brothers didn't want to buy me out, and I didn't have the money to buy it. So it gets sold. And anyway, it's a complex equation that we can't ignore. And so we are engaging in the processes to have night rentals, to have rentals. Affordable housing, I'm not sure it exists in Midway, but we need to be creative. And we're working on some things, whether it's, controlling the use, ADUs. There's so many different ideas people are coming up with, and we're looking at every single one.
And one of the things that I am really impressed with Midway is short-term rentals. And Midway has been very cognizant of neighborhoods and making sure that the short-term rental industry doesn't bleed into neighborhoods. In some ways, even before you were on council, there were some homeowners or second homeowners that were a little bit frustrated with Midway because Midway had such a thumb down on short-term rentals. But there's an advantage to that because you control, you make sure that you're not being overrun with vacation rental homes.
Yeah, let me use the word manage.
Yes.
Because I don't want to control. I live in the resort zone. My little cul-de-sac has one of our neighbors does nightly rentals. So enforcement is important for that. The other component of enforcement, though, is to identify these neighborhoods that should not have nightly rentals in them. And that's critical. But it takes nightly rentals. It takes long-term rentals. It takes supporting the resort zones. And that's a part of Midway.
I like the word manage, though. I appreciate that because it does take management, and it takes a part of the community to be part of those conversations. And Midway's done such a great job with your open houses and your public comment, and you have engaged citizens and educated citizens, which I appreciate.
See, when we really do, you talked about open space. I've been on board with this because my early introduction to Midway was the early 90s. And we had an executive getaway that went to the Homestead, first time I ever heard of it. And we were going snowmobiling in the winter up one of the canyons. And it's different today. It's completely different. And in order to keep the rural feel, the open space attention has been important. And when 70+% of your community is behind the concept of the bond to preserve these historical lands, right? Their legacy to the community and what Midway used to be. We're down to a couple of farms and that's it. And there's a handful of folks that their family are still farmers. I respect that. That's an important part of our heritage.
Yeah. And I think we often overlook how really blessed we are that Wasatch Mountain State Park was established to preserve in perpetuity 24,000 acres of true open space because it's publicly owned. And you talked about those trails and the access to get into the mountains. We have that because of the state park. And they are such a good partner to Midway. It's such a great relationship with the campground and the golf courses. And it really, I hope people don't overlook the value that Wasatch Mountain State Park is to Midway and the Heber Valley as a whole.
Well, once again, vision.
Yeah.
Right? The state was forward-looking. The golf courses are some of the best. Everybody loves to, whether it's, up in the mountains or on the side of the hill in Soldier Hollow. Yeah. Driving up to Cascade Springs. We know these places because we're here, but I think it's just wonderful to be able to get away.
Yeah.
That same vision has put Midway in the position it's in today, whether it was Mayor Tatton and the infrastructure. Midway City is in a good place with our water and our sewer and what makes servicing the community. And we're trying to make the decisions today. You ask people about a vision and most, they don't even know what to do or what that means. Vision, I'm getting up today and not got a vacation in the summer planned or a cruise in the fall.
Or they're getting kids to school or they're running a business or they're caring for an elderly parent. So many people get caught up in the day-to-day, but it takes leadership like you to make these things happen.
It's been interesting to work with. We changed from a management group to the city to team leads. We are teams that work together. We come together in a round table every Monday morning. And the last few weeks, it's really been helping the individuals, the leadership of Midway, get out of your box.
You're empowering them.
Where are we going to be in a year? Where are we going to be in 3 years? And where are we going to be in 5? And I've even extended out to 25 years. That takes foresight. That takes, it is a little bit looking in a crystal ball. 25 years ago, when you were at the Homestead, I never had a clue that we would have the downtown area and the visitors that come from everywhere. But as we look 3 to 5 years, which is, we're able to think about that. If we'd have looked that way a little bit more about parking or had some idea what was going on. The exciting one for me right now is the town square.
Yeah.
There's been some.
As we wrap up, let's talk about your vision for the town square. What do you see happening? Music on the square has been really popular and a lot of fun. The ice rink, had to close early because it's been this crazy warm winter. But what do you want to happen at the town square in the next 3 years?
For me, it's about community and connection. So that needs to be usable. We don't even have hardly a bench for people to sit on, right? The rink is working really well now. Boosters have actually come in and Doug Gray and Steve Hardy, who's a Boosters president now, have focused on that. I've seen both of them on the Zamboni, right? There were some maintenance issues and they have that thing working well now. There was talk to move it because we were to have to replace the concrete. Doesn't need to happen now.
Good.
And so we can focus on bringing people to the square, having a place for them to bring their family and have picnic tables and have walkways. And we could be a little more creative than just grass. It needs to be beautified. We have a responsibility to maintain and manage the buildings that are there. They need some attention. Layout of the square needs some improvement. We have references back to Roger Brooks. We hired an engineering company to come in with a study. We're looking at those again. And I'm excited about having a place. It needs to be named. This goes back 50 years. Somebody lit the school on fire. They put a city building there. Money was loaned to have that city building. And with that came some control of what could be done on the square. We were concerned that we wouldn't be able to do anything. We've worked through it as long as it's recreation based. We can do pretty much what we'd like to do. The vision we have is executable. To me, that's exciting.
Yeah. Also, I hope I'm not overstepping, but I understand that the small town 4th of July celebration, you have a very special group of entertainers that will be coming to the square. The Utah Symphony will be performing.
It will. And this is a component of America 250. This started 2 weeks ago with our banners going on. We have a mural that 950 people will be able to paint a tile. This will be initially put on the community center for everyone to see, taken down when we start our tree lighting. But the shining moment will be the evening of July 4th after the morning sunrise service, which is a booster-sponsored activity, and the breakfast, the pancake breakfast. We get the Utah Symphony in town for the 4th of July.
So impressed. That, honestly, it's something that the square has always been begging for. It is so beautiful with the big pine trees and the historic town hall in the background. But to have the symphony come at no charge and want to perform at the square, they do this around the state. They travel to different communities, and I understand they picked Midway. There is some local connection within the symphony. Paul Green, who I went to high school with, is part of that organization, and he's really excited to bring his group.
Well, they came out last week, 6 or 8 of them, kind of taking a look at the square, and it was fun to listen. And I love the square. I know the square. And they're like, what if we put the trailer here? Because they'll bring in a semi-trailer,
right?
Unfold this thing, and we get to hear one of the best symphonies around. And yes, there is a connection with the community. They all had the same comment. We love Midway. You had the beautiful mountains. It was hilarious because we're talking about 4th of July right next to an ice rink, with frozen ice and people ice skating. No, it's great. There's only one community that gets the 4th of July.
Yeah.
And that's us.
And they picked you. And it's free to the public. There's no charge. Bring your blankets, bring your folding chairs, your lawn chairs, whatever. It's
Some of yours sings wonderful music that will have a patriotic focus, and then the annual fireworks show.
Still on Memorial Hill.
This year, yes.
Yeah. But things change, communities change, but traditions don't. And that one, you're going to find a place that will be safe for everyone. Oh, I love it. Craig, as we wrap up, I want to ask you, what do you love most about living in Midway?
That's a good question, because it really isn't one thing. It's lots of things. When I campaigned, I said, let's keep Midway Midway. That specifically is defined differently by everybody. I love that I can bring my family there. It's a gathering place for my family, whether it's hiking up in the hills or going and having a grilled cheese sandwich or walking along the Provo River, right? Hopping on the train. We got right on one of the new train cars that goes through Midway, even though it starts in Heber.
Yeah.
I think it's the plethora, right? The cornucopia of activity and connection and community that we have in Midway.
I love it. And you really have been so instrumental for so many years. You and I have a great friendship, and it's been so fun to see you take this step reluctantly, but you really are the right man for the job as you move Midway forward and tackle some of these important issues. So I appreciate what you're doing. I just really want to thank you for your service to Midway community. It has always been selfless, whether it's been with the Midway Boosters or your time at the Crater and just creating an amazing experience for the visitors and the locals. That I made it one of my birthday presents to go soak in the Midway Crater. It's just great. So thank you again for the time today. This has been a great opportunity to sit down and learn more about Midway. For our listeners, I just want to thank you for tuning in to Heber Valley Life Podcast, where we share the stories about the people and the places and really preserving the spirit of Heber Valley. So if you enjoyed today's conversation, be sure to subscribe and share an episode and support local businesses and leaders and make this is what makes our valley special, a place that we call home. So Rachel Kahler, Director of the Community Alliance for Main Street, here with Mayor Craig Simons. Stop by the Crater if you haven't been there yet and make an appointment to take a soak. It's well worth your time. So again, thanks for listening, and we'll catch you again next time.
Thank you.